Hi there, everybody. I miss you so much. I want to make this as normal as possible. So, I'm definitely going to keep reading to you and we're going to keep learning as readers. So, of course, we need to dive back into Night of the Spadefoot Toads. And we left off in chapter 16, and I will do a little recap. But I want to talk about our goal as readers today. Our goal as readers is to identify, now that we're nearing towards the end of the story, what the theme is of Night of the Spadefoot Toads. We've had some of those discussions of possible themes for Night of the Spadefoot Toads, but we haven't quite selected one yet. And remember, we have to prove our theme with 3 pieces of evidence. So today, while I'm reading chapter 17, I want you to think about, what is the moral, the message, the lessons that we're learning from Ben in this story that started in the beginning and started to unfold as we traveled throughout the story? We definitely want to follow Ben and look at his actions to show us what we've learned from him, or what message or moral has he sent to us as readers. At the end of the book, we are going to identify one and we're going to prove it with evidence. So today I want you really thinking about that. That's your purpose while Miss Pierce is reading today. What I'd like you to do next is I'd like you to grab your iPad and I'd like you to follow along with me on chapter 17, just like we do in the classroom, whether it's in Realize Reader or on Epic. If you need to pause me for a minute to get right to it, it's chapter 17 and it's on page 191. And then you can press play when you get there. I'm going to go ahead and start reading. But first, let's talk about how chapter 16 ended. So at the end of chapter 16, it says, she's taking off points, but she's giving me another week. I'm going to do my report on ponds and swamps here in Massachusetts. Jenny holds up her hand for a high five. So Ben, remember, didn't finish his report, and he was honest with Mrs. Kutcher. She's giving him a second chance, and he changed his biome, his environment, to marshes and ponds. Those are his interests now. He's no longer doing the desert. We talked as readers that was evidence that Ben has changed. He's starting to adapt to life here in Massachusetts and forget about his life that was back in Tucson. Maybe that's part of a potential theme. Let's keep reading to see if he does some more changing. Chapter 17. When Ben gets home, he grabs a snack and is about to head back outside when his mom calls out, "There's something for you in your room." He runs down the hall and finds a big box sitting on his bedroom floor. Its corners are squashed and Ben recognizes his own handwriting on the inside. Ben's room. Finally, he says to himself. He drops his backpack, rips the tape off the box, and pulls back the flaps. His mom comes in and leans against the door, watching him. His first thought when he looks in the box is that there's not as much stuff as he remembered. What's missing? He pulls out the little pill bottles holding insects, the plastic food container, and holds the snakeskin, the posters of desert animals he folded so carefully when he packed in Tucson, and finally, down at the bottom, the books and his collection of rocks. Happy? His mother says. Yeah, Ben says. His mother smiles and leaves the room. Ben looks through the stuff again. It's all there, but it still feels like something is missing. It's not as exciting or comforting as he thought it would be. All of the things in the box seem like parts of his life from so long ago. Some other time, some other place. He's glad he got the box back, but it doesn't seem so important now. He puts the stuff back in the box and runs to the kitchen. Think for a minute, friends, at home. What does that piece of evidence show about Ben? Has he adapted here in Massachusetts? Has he grown to love it? Is this his new home and he's accepted it? His mom is busy with something on the other side of the room, so Ben grabs a handful of cookies and heads outside. He thinks about going by the trail, but decides his bike will be faster. He wants to get Mrs. Tibbets's house before anyone else does. But by the time he gets there, the driveway is filled with cars. Mrs. Tibbets' old station wagon sits next to her sister-in-law's car. Parked behind them are a bright green van with the name of the real estate company on the side and a blue car with the state insignia on the door. Ben's heart races. He knocks on the front door. When nobody answers, he walks around to the back and finds 4 people standing in a semicircle. Looking at the backfield, sandwiched between Mrs. Tibbets and her sister-in-law, a tall lady in a business suit with a purse slung over her shoulder, and a short, stocky man in a brown windbreaker, an ancient green baseball cap, and hiking boots. He's holding a clipboard under one arm. No one's talking. They're just standing there looking like they'd rather be somewhere else. They all turn when they hear Ben come up. "Hello, Ben," says Mrs. Tibbets. "Hi," Ben says back. "This is Tabitha Turner, my sister-in-law, and this is Adela Garrett, her real estate agent. And this, you must be the young man who called," said the man in the green cap. His face breaks into a grin. "I'm Hank Lindsay," he says, holding out his hand. Ben's dad has always told him you can tell a lot from someone's handshake, and Ben likes the friendly way Hank Lindsay shakes his hand. "Hi, Mr. Lindsay." The real estate agent looks at Ben and Mr. Lindsay like she thinks they don't belong here. But Ben isn't leaving. "Excuse me, but I'm still mystified as to why this boy felt free to invite a person from the state onto my property." "I spoke with Mr. Lindsay too, Tabitha," Mrs. Tibbet says. "I told him he should come." Tabitha Turner sniffs and shakes her head. "Well," says Mr. Garrett, "this is certainly a beautiful piece of property. It has terrific possibilities." She gives Hank Lindsay a tight little smile. There's an awkward moment of silence, and Ben is glad he doesn't have to do anything but stand there and be a kid. "Well," Mr. Lindsay says, taking out his clipboard, "let's go have a look." "It's over here," says Mrs. Tibbets. "The pool is down the path on the other side of the garage." She leads the way and everyone follows behind her in a straggly line. "What was in there?" Mr. Lindsay asked, nodding to the empty cages beside the garage. "Snakes," says Mrs. Tibbets, hurrying toward the trailhead. "My husband was a herpetologist." "I know," Mr. Lindsay says. "I met him several times. He knew his stuff." Tabitha shakes her head and mumbles something to Mrs. Garrett as they try to keep up with the others. Swallows swoop overhead and mockingbird calls from the branches of the tree in the back field. "This is an interesting piece of land," Mr. Lindsay says. "There are several different habitats. There's that meadow behind the house, and it looks like there is an outcropping of granite over there. And a vernal pool," Ben says hopefully. The real estate agent swats at gnats flying around her head. As they enter the woods, the canopy of the leaves above them casts splotchy shadows on the forest floor. "It's a little wet back here," Mr. Lindsay says. "I don't know if you could build on this part." "It's always wetter in the spring," the real estate agent says, treading carefully to avoid getting mud on her shiny shoes. It takes a while for this odd mix of hikers to get through the woods. Mr. Lindsay, Ben, and Mrs. Tibbet stop several times on the path so the 2 other women can catch up. When they near the vernal pool, Ben runs ahead. It's almost like he wants to warn the pool that people are coming. But when he gets to the big rock, he stops and stares. There's no pool. He can't believe it. It's completely dried up. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never believe there was a pool here only a few days ago. Now it's just a little dip in the ground surrounded by rocks and trees. Their leaves casting a deep shadow where the pool had been. Small yellow-green bunches of leaves are shooting up out of the spot. Ben hears the others approaching and turns to face them. "This is the pool," he says, hoping Mr. Lindsay can see something that isn't there. "This is where the Spadefoots come." "But there's nothing here," exclaims Mr. Garrett. "Not even a puddle." "But it was here," Ben says. "It's been here every year for thousands of years." "Oh, really?" says the real estate agent. Mr. Lindsay squats and looks at the site. They all watch him. He scratches the back of his head, then pushes aside the plants growing up out of the dark, rooting leaves. He presses a finger into the damp earth. He's like a doctor examining a patient. "What do you think?" Ben asks. We're going to stop there today on a cliffhanger. What do you think will happen next with Mr. Lindsay, Ben, Mrs. Tibbets, and the real estate agent? Will they be able to prove that this land has a vernal pool on it and it's certified as endangered because of the spadefoot toads? Or will they not be able to prove this? And now Mrs. Tibbetts and Ben are going to have to be okay with the fact that they're going to build homes. Better yet, what do you possibly think, based on what we learned about Ben early on in this chapter, could be a possible theme conveyed in Night of the Spadefoot Toads? Soon this week, I'm going to have you write that down and prove it with 3 pieces of evidence. Go ahead and grab your own personal book of choice today. Find a cozy spot. I hope that you're excited to read your book that you picked out before we left on Wednesday, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. If it's fiction today, please make sure you're thinking about theme, following your characters and their actions and what they're trying to teach you. What's the moral and the message? If it's nonfiction today, think about all the new learning you're learning. I can't wait to see you again, and we will pick up tomorrow on the next part of Night of the Spadefoot Toads. Bye for now.